Europe was at a crossroads. The fractured continent of competing kingdoms struggled for dominance. Old powers waned, new forces emerged, and foreign invaders pressed at the edges of the known world. Yet, amid the uncertainty, a force was rising, one that would reshape the political and religious landscape of Europe for centuries to come. Hello, and welcome to Impactful Moments, where we explore some of the most, you guessed it, impactful moments in human history. If history is your thing or you simply enjoy learning new topics, please consider liking and subscribing to our channel. Your support helps us to continue creating captivating, impactful historical content. In this video, we will discuss the coronation and reign of Charlemagne, the father of Europe. Europe was changing. Following the fall of Rome in 476 CE, the European continent was split between a number of Germanic and other tribal kingdoms, most notably the Visigoths in Iberia and the Franks in the lands that are modern France and Germany. Over the next centuries, powers continued to shift, with the rapidly expanding Umayyad Caliphate conquering Iberia in the 8th century, renaming it Al-Andalus, and the Franks expanding territories both east and west under their Merovingian dynasty. However, with time and weak kings, Frankish rule faltered, and the kingdom fractured into several semi-autonomous regions, primarily Austrasia in the east and Neustria in the west, which were ruled not by the kings but by the mayors of the palace. Amid this fractured political landscape, Charles Martel emerged as a unifying force. Around 718, he became the Duke of the Franks by consolidating their territories and expanding their reach east. In 732, he delivered a decisive victory over the raiding Umayyad forces at the Battle of Tours, earning him the moniker Martel, meaning the hammer. This monumental battle not only halted the Islamic advance into Western Europe, but also brought the rebellious Duchy of Aquitaine back under Frankish control, solidifying Charles's place in history. Charles Martel's legacy was carried forward by his two sons, Charlemagne and Pepin the Short, who shared leadership as mayor of the palace. However, in 747, following Charlemagne's surprising decision to retire to monastic life, Pepin became the sole Frankish leader. With an ambitious vision for the kingdom, Pepin sought to formalize his power. In 751, with the endorsement of Pope Zachary, Pepin deposed the king, Childeric III, and was crowned King of the Franks, marking the end of the figurehead Merovingians and the rise of the Carolingian dynasty, meaning Dynasty of Charles, named after Charles Martel. Pepin's reign established a powerful bond between the Frankish kingdom and the church, a partnership that would shape European politics for centuries. Following his victory over the Lombards in northern Italy in 756, Pepin granted the Papal States to the Pope, solidifying the Franks as protectors of the Church. Upon Pepin's death in 768, the kingdom was divided between his sons, Charles and Charlemagne, this Charlemagne being Pepin's son, not brother. This uneasy division of the Frankish realm came to an abrupt end in 771. Charlemagne died suddenly, possibly due to a nosebleed, leaving Charles to inherit the entirety of the Frankish kingdom, marking the beginning of one of the most transformative and influential reigns in European history. Charles, known today as Charlemagne, wasted no time in asserting his authority and expanding the Frankish realm. Early in his reign, he launched a series of military campaigns that brought vast territories under Frankish control. He subdued the Lombards in northern Italy in 774, assuming the title King of the Lombards, and securing Frankish influence over the Italian peninsula. To the east, Charlemagne conquered Bavaria in 788 and led prolonged campaigns against the Saxons, a pagan people who fiercely resisted Frankish domination. These Saxon wars, which spanned over 3 decades, eventually brought the Saxons into the fold of the Frankish kingdom, solidifying Charlemagne's reputation as a formidable military leader. In the south, Charlemagne pushed into the Iberian Peninsula, establishing the Spanish March as a buffer zone between the Franks and the Islamic Emirate of Cordoba. Despite a humiliating defeat to the Basques in the Pyrenees at the Battle of the Roncevaux Pass, Charlemagne pushed forward, and by the late 8th century, his conquests had created the largest and most powerful kingdom in Europe since the fall of Rome over 300 years earlier. Charlemagne's growing power and influence reached a climactic moment on Christmas Day in the year 800. Following political opposition, Pope Leo III, who had been accused of numerous crimes and had been physically attacked in Rome, sought help from Charlemagne, who ultimately sent protection. In response, or possibly as a tactic to simply ingratiate himself, Pope Leo III crowned Charlemagne Emperor of the Romans in St. Peter's Basilica. This act symbolized the revival of the Western Roman Empire and cemented the alliance between the Frankish monarch and the papacy. The coronation also marked a significant shift in European politics, as it established Charlemagne as the protector of Christendom and a unifying figure for the fragmented continent. However, Charlemagne's imperial ambitions were not without its questions. His relationship with the Byzantine Empire, ruled by Empress Irene, saw increased tension. Irene, who had consolidated power in Constantinople after blinding her own son to secure her reign, may have viewed Charlemagne's coronation as a challenge to Byzantine authority. While some sources note a proposed marriage between Charlemagne and Irene to ease those tensions, it never came to fruition, and Irene was overthrown just 2 years later. Beyond his military and political achievements, Charlemagne demonstrated an insatiable thirst for knowledge. He championed education and the arts, ushering in a period known as the Carolingian Renaissance. Under his rule, monasteries became centers of learning. Classical texts were preserved and literacy was promoted among the clergy and nobility. Charlemagne himself took an active interest in learning, studying subjects ranging from theology to astronomy, and even attempted to learn to write, with debatable success, a rarity for rulers of his time. Charlemagne's reign was also marked by his fervent efforts to spread Christianity throughout his empire. He worked closely with the church to convert conquered peoples, often employing force to achieve religious unity. The Saxons, in particular, were subjected to harsh measures, including mass baptisms and the destruction of pagan sites. In the later years of his reign, Charlemagne focused on succession, internal rulership of his vast empire, and diplomacy with external powers, such as the Byzantines and Abbasid Muslims, who even granted him ceremonial leadership over Christian sites in Jerusalem. At its greatest extent, his realm stretched from the Pyrenees in the west to the Danube to the east, and from the North Sea to central Italy. This vast empire was a testament to Charlemagne's vision and determination, as well as his ability to unite diverse peoples under a single rule. By the time of his death in 814, Charlemagne had transformed Europe, leaving a legacy that would shape the continent for centuries to come. Charlemagne's conquests brought a remarkable unity to much of Europe, a cohesion not seen since the height of the Roman Empire. The Church played a crucial role in reinforcing his unity, providing a spiritual foundation that transcended local divisions and bolstered Frankish rule. Yet, his newfound cohesion faced challenges following Charlemagne's death in 814. According to Frankish customs, lands were bequeathed and divided among all legitimate sons, which in Charlemagne's case consisted only of Louis the Pious. However, the fragile unity began to unravel after Louis's death in 840, when his 3 legitimate sons fought for dominance. The resulting conflict splintered the empire, and as successive generations inherited smaller and smaller portions of the land, the Carolingian world descended into a web of fragmentation and turmoil. Even as political unity disintegrated, the cultural and intellectual achievements championed by Charlemagne endured. The Carolingian Renaissance, a hallmark of his reign, sparked a revival of education, literacy, including the development of Carolingian minuscule, the ancestor of the modern Latin alphabet system, and the preservation of classical knowledge. Monasteries became hubs of learning, safeguarding ancient texts and nurturing studies in theology, philosophy, and the arts. This intellectual awakening offered a temporary reprieve from the Dark Ages, laying the groundwork for future cultural and scientific advancements across Europe. At the same time, the continued existence of a Carolingian emperor reignited tensions with the Byzantine Empire. Charlemagne's coronation as Emperor of the Romans in 800 had already strained relations, as the Byzantines saw themselves as the sole heirs of the Roman legacy. These disputes over imperial authority and legitimacy, known as the problem of two emperors, highlighted the fractured nature of Christendom, with the rivalry between East and West serving as a symbol of the enduring divisions within the medieval world. Charlemagne's name, meaning Charles the Great, was well earned in many respects, but his greatness and ultimately his legacy came at a cost. His vision of a unified Christian Europe required force, subjugation, and, at times, cruelty. Nowhere was this more evident than his wars against the Saxons. Determined to eliminate resistance and enforce Christian rule, he waged a decades-long campaign against the fiercely independent tribes, culminating in acts of extreme violence such as the massacre of Verdun in 782, where thousands of Saxon prisoners were executed. His insistence on conversion went beyond persuasion. Those who refused to accept Christianity faced exile, imprisonment, or sometimes death. Yet, the structures he built, the traditions he reinforced, and the ambitions he inspired would shape the trajectory of Western civilization long after his empire had faded. He was not merely a ruler of the Franks, he was an architect of Europe itself. Structurally, the feudal system, which would dominate the medieval world, can largely trace its roots to his governance. Culturally, his coronation as Emperor of the Romans set a precedent for future rulers who sought to revive the grandeur of Rome, ultimately influencing the formation of the Holy Roman Empire in the 10th century, with some historians even naming Charlemagne as its first emperor. While Voltaire famously noted that it was neither holy nor Roman nor an empire, Charlemagne's recognition by the Pope as the head of what was considered the successor to Rome at a time when his authority was still quite centralized made him the closest a leader would come. However, as noted above, the Carolingian dynasty would experience significant turmoil with the Frankish lands divided, and an ensuing power struggle among his grandchildren following his son's death. The conflict culminated with the Treaty of Verdun in 843, which divided the empire into West Francia, East Francia, and Middle Francia. This partition, while a fragmentation of the centralized Carolingian Empire, is also seen by many historians as the birth of the cultural identities that would become modern France and Germany, as the regions began to diverge and develop their own traditions. Charlemagne's reign was built on conquest, but his conquest created the conditions for intellectual and cultural revival. His rule saw unity and progress, but also brutality. But, whether seen as a benevolent ruler or a ruthless conqueror, there is little doubt that Charlemagne reshaped the course of European history, leaving behind a legacy that endures to this day. I hope you enjoyed this video and found this period in history both informative and enlightening. Please feel free to share your thoughts in the comments below, and I hope you can join us for another video. Thanks for watching.